Welcome members of the gallery, staff, councillors to Richmond Valley Council's October Ordinary Meeting. I'd like to congratulate the returning and newly elected councillors on your election. I'm sure we will work together cohesively and respectfully during the coming 4-year term. I'll now do the acknowledgement of country. Richmond Valley Council recognises the people of the Bundjalung Nations as custodians and traditional owners of this land, and we value and appreciate their continuing culture, connections to lands, their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region in the past, present and future. Mr General Manager, could you read the prayer, please?
Dear Lord, we meet to serve our Richmond Valley community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, and to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognise our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. Amen.
Amen. Item 3 on the agenda now is public access. We have 3 requests, and the first one is from Mrs Jacqueline Rees, Stop the Iron Gates Incorporated, item 14.1, Iron Gates Development, Notice of Intent to Appeal. Mrs Rees, are you there? Would you like to come forward, please, up to the lectern?
I think it's Jocelyn.
Sorry, Jocelyn. I've mispronounced your name. My apologies. Jocelyn, we have you have 5 minutes, and at 4 minutes you'll hear a bell ring, and then you have a minute after that. So when you're ready.
Can everyone hear me okay? First of all, I'd like to congratulate the new council, and I look forward to observing your contributions to the area over the next few years as you hold office. As you said, I'd like to address Mr Vaughan's 14.1 Iron Gates Development Notice Attention to Appeal, Executive Summary and subsequent recommendations. I would like to note the judgment of Chief Justice Preston, and whilst I'm not a lawyer, I would recommend the Richmond Valley Council to appeal their judgment on many factors, and most notably, the community has opposed this zombie DA since its inception, some 40 years ago. I also understand that this appeal acknowledges the constraints of Section 57 of the Land Environment Court in limiting appeal options to questions of the law. However, when considering the decision to appeal, I would like the Council to acknowledge the negative cultural, environmental, economic and social impacts this development presents, and its unknown, far-reaching future impacts. These have been identified and acknowledged within the 9 volumes of community responses opposed to the DA by many members of the community and specialists alike. Given the complexity of the DA, I would like in my time slot just to focus on the impact of natural disasters. Firstly, I would like to address the issue of the shelter in place, and this consideration was made by the court at a time when no policy was in place in New South Wales. I further raise concerns of the practicalities of such a measure of support. Anyone who experienced the recent bushfires and floods, either firsthand or vicariously, will understand my concerns. But before I expand on this, I'd like to digress to a recent Australian parliamentary inquiry released on the 18th of this month. It looked into the 2022 floods and insurers' responses. As a result of this inquiry, banks would be discouraged from lending to home buyers and property developers who purchase and build in newly approved areas that are of a high risk of flooding as part of the federal push to enforce local and state governments to stop inappropriate developments. So the federal government experts are telling us it is a bad idea to build in flood-prone locations. So sit with that for a moment, everyone. Banks may not lend for this development. So going back to the proposed DA, let's imagine the developer self-funds. The potential new residents will most likely be older people selling a home and buying in with their own funds. I would suggest baby boomers or older Gen Xers who'd be in their 50s, 60s and 70s, senior citizens. And thus, we return to the issue of the shelter in place and the human factor. What research has been completed concerning this type of natural disaster refuge and its operation by senior citizens? Anyone who experienced the evacuation centres will know the impact of the disaster and human factor that underpins this, especially in the light of limitations of age. Also, some of these senior citizens will have to walk probably half a kilometre or more to get to the shelter. From my experiences both in fire and flood, you don't have enough time for this. Residents can be reluctant to leave their homes early and thus face greater challenges, especially in light of mobility. Some will need medication and medical attention and others provisions. Who will provide for this? Who will be regularly ensuring the shelter in place is adequately stocked and ready at a moment's notice for a natural disaster? The developer, the council, the community? I don't know who. And who's going to rescue these people when they make it to the shelter, or if they make it there? Who is going to decide on the priority of the rescue across the region? Last time it was the community who did the rescuing. Will they send boats to the Iron Gates, and will they be able to get there easily? And my question is, will they want to? After opposing this DA and preempting the dangers, will rescuers voluntarily put their lives on the line? These are some of the concerns that I have in regards to this DA. I know I'm about to run out of time, so rather than go on, I think I'll just finish there. Thank you very much for your time.
Excuse me, did you want to take any questions from the councillors? Are you right? It's up to you.
No, that's fine.
Does any councillor have any questions? Jacqueline?
I've got a question.
Councillor Hayes?
It's probably not to Jocelyn. It might be to Angela to answer on behalf of council. Jocelyn has said that the land there will be flood-prone land. Is that the case? Or
Can we
just be
wait till the debate?
isolated?
Can we wait till the debate when the item comes up?
Can do.
Yep,
Can do. I
please.
just thought it'd be
Yep.
prominent then. So.
Yep, because it's,
Okay, yep.
it's questions to the presenter. Any other councillors? Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you very much for your time, Councillor.
Our next request is from Mr Doug Luke on item 14.1, Iron Gates Development, Notice of Intention to Appeal. Mr Luke. No doubt you heard the time limits and you're quite aware of them.
I'm going to be well inside that, I think.
Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. Welcome to your new job, the new people. Let's look forward to some really good action. My name's Doug Luke. I live close to Evans Head and I pay my rates to Richmond Valley Council. I am very interested in the workings of the council. I've been following Iron Gates for many years, since 1997 in fact. We are at the point where council's going to chuck in the towel and allow a rapacious developer to ruin our small town. We are known as the jewel in the crown of Richmond Valley. Destruction of our beautiful environment could be just around the corner. Your action, if you vote against appealing this case, will see the very people in Evans Head and surrounds who've put you in your seats for the next 4 years suffer the consequences. Thousands of truck movements are likely to bring fill through our quiet suburbs, fill which will probably bring flooding onto neighbours living nearby. Extra long queues at the medical centre. Jocelyn's already mentioned the likely age group of people living there. Impossible parking in town. Evans Head is unique. You folk from Casino just love it. It's your paradise by the sea. Let's not stuff it up. I attended the court hearings in Ballina. Council's legal representatives put up what I call a PISS fight, if you can even call it a fight. This very same bunch are the ones now telling council, you aren't going to win this appeal. Are you going to base your vote on these wimpish words? Or are you going to stand up for your residents and ratepayers? You haven't a clue how much this development is going to cost council in infrastructure and compliance, so generously dumped on council by the appeal judge. Thank you, Your Honour. That unknown cost is now and forever. The cost of appealing now might be insignificant by comparison. please have the fortitude tonight, right here in front of us, to vote for an appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you take questions?
I'm happy
Any
to.
questions? Mr. Luke? No questions. Thank you very much. Our third speaker is Dr. Richard Gates, Evans Head Residents for Sustainable Development Incorporated, item 14.1, Iron Gates Development, Notice of Intention to Appeal. Mr. Gates, please come forward. Welcome, and you'd be aware of the times constraint.
Of course not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Congratulations, councillors, on your re-election, and good luck for the next few years. I want to address 14.1, the Iron Gates. I've been involved in this for a long time. I've actually known this property since 1955, and I have a substantial knowledge of it, and have been the executor for a couple of the Padden family, original white folks that lived there, etc. Well, let me just be brief. Have not much choice. I'm not happy with the indicative chronology that you've been provided on which you're going to base your decision. There's quite a bit of incorrect information contained within that document. For example, the NRPP hearing date is incorrect. The information is actually missing information. So, for example, the preamble to the decision of the NRPP is missing, and it does condition what is said subsequently. That information should have been made available. There's also information missing, and is incorrect, some of it, to do with the Queensland Supreme Court cases where Iron Gates Proprietary Limited and Ingalls, Mr. Ingalls brought action against Richmond River Shire Council and 10 other parties. That set of cases was considered in 2006, not the dates which you are given in the summary. There was an agreement which was reached, and that's mentioned in the summary information that you have, but what's not provided is how those conditions were reached and what the agreement was between Ingalls and Council about what would happen in the future. Was there an agreement made with Council at the time? There certainly was, to do with expert witnesses, but that doesn't happen in a vacuum. I would like to know what that agreement was with Council at the time. That is critical information to understanding what Council may have subsequently done. It certainly conditions what Council has done. I'm most unhappy with the judge's decision. There were 21 reports made out of the public view, which we subsequently got to see. And many of these have problems, particularly to do with the expert individuals making decisions. I question the expertise of some of these individuals. So, for example, with the bushfire reports, certainly both sides had experts in bushfire per se, but those individuals who were deciding about shelter in place and so on did not have any, as far as I can see, expertise in human factors, yet human factors are a major consideration. And these points were raised in submissions made by the public in the 9 volumes which appeared in evidence in the court. Why weren't these matters looked at? I also have a problem with the fact that the judge failed to take up some materials which were pertinent to the case. For example, White versus Ballina Council. Why was that case not looked at? It's a critical case with regard to how you interpret what happened with the environment over the longer term. The attention given in that case was really critical in understanding the decision which was made about why that appeal from White was rejected by the judge in that case. Mr. Astle represented the applicant in that circumstance, and I'm just interested to see what was said which might be of interest to Council. There are many other aspects of the stuff which was considered by individuals in their submissions, and it seems that very little of that was attended to in the judge's consideration. The judge ignored the court orders of 1997, of the 4th of July, in his judgment. Those court orders are not only about Iron Gates, but also name very specifically on the actual court orders Mr. Ingles and another party and point out that failure to achieve the goals of remediation in 2 years would lead to fines and potential jail. Those are not insignificant requirements of a court, yet they were never followed up. They're critical in this case and should have been looked at because of the taste that's left in the mouths of the public about the court not doing what it should be doing, that is following up on those requirements. I'm not happy with Council's recommendation to proceed with an appeal. There is no economic assessment. I think you should be applying for leave of the court for an extension of time, given the local government elections and the small time allotted for councillors to consider these matters. There are many other issues, but I will leave it at that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Gates? Dr. Gates? No questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Apologies. There's no apologies. We have a full house. Item 5, the mayoral minute. I'll move that if I can get a seconder, please.
Second,
Councillor
Mr. Mayor.
Morrissey. Councillors, this is a pretty straightforward recommendation, and we were fortunate enough to have Her Excellency the Honourable Margaret Beasley, ACKC, Governor, and Mr Dennis Wilson visit us a week or so ago. They were in our area for 4 days, and as our local member, Mr Richie Williamson, said, when she usually goes out in the countries, it's 2, a maximum of 3. So we're very privileged to have her here that long. She, as you can see in the report, she visited a lot of areas and engaged with the community on lots of occasions. I think she was doing 5 functions or visits a day while she was here. Maybe not on the Saturday, but done 1 or 2. But yeah, it was pleasing to have her here. On a know that the community that she visited and spoke to were very happy and found her a very charming lady. So it was great. We all had the opportunity to meet her here, and I think I accompanied her on 4 of her engagements, 4 or 5 of engagements. So, the NRLX was the first sale yard she'd ever visit in her time, in her life, and she was very taken by what happens in the beef industry. So, yeah, it was good to have her here. So, as the recommendation says, I'd like to write her a thank you letter. Any other speakers? I'll put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Page 7, confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 20th of August 2024. Could I get a mover, please?
Move that way.
Councillor Humphries and a seconder.
Second.
Councillor Cornish. I'll put that as the accuracy. Is everyone happy with the accuracy of that? Put all those in favour, carried. And one against. Over the page, the minutes of the extraordinary meeting held on the 9th of October 2024. Could I get a mover of the confirmation, please?
Move that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey, a seconder.
Second.
Councillor Cornish. Everyone happy with the accuracy of those? Put that motion in. All those in favour. Item 7 on page 9. Matters arising out of those minutes from both the meetings. Anyone?
Yeah, I have a question.
Councillor Hayes.
On page 9 of the attachments, matters arising out of the minutes, number 7 there, it says, I followed up with the, on behalf of the Traffic Committee with the, regarding heavy vehicle movements around McDonald Street and Broadwater, and at the bottom of that there was further discussions on this matter will be undertaken with Transport New South Wales, with the outcome being presented to the next Traffic Committee meeting in the new council term. Have those discussions taken place as yet?
Mr General Manager.
My understanding is meeting dates have been set. Meeting dates have been set for the next Traffic Committee.
Yep.
So in the preparation for that, we'll be ensuring that those discussions take place to get any updates from Transport New South Wales to inform that meeting so that any actions can be decided upon
or decisions around suggest further advocacy.
Thank you.
No other matters arising out of the minutes? Item 8, declarations of interest. Has any councillor got any declarations of interest? Mr General Manager, have you received any?
I've just received one declaration from Councillor Cornish. It's in the matter of item 19.7, which is in relation to essential worker housing in New South Wales. Councillor Cornish has identified that as a non-pecuniary, insignificant conflict.
Thank you. That'll be noted. Petitions, there's no petitions, and notice of motions, no notice of motions. We'll go over the page to 10, 11.1. Mayor's report, mayoral attendance report. I'll move that. Can I get a seconder, please?
I'll second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Morrissey, any questions or business out of those attended?
Yeah, I've got one for you.
Councillor Hayes.
The White Cane Day, the walk around casino, you've been doing that now for quite a few years. I'm just wondering what kind of improvements we've made in the town to accommodate these people.
Over time, there are now 5 tactile crossings for the visually impaired, and there is 1 to go. They're a very organised and strong group. They've got a lot of members, and members from not only casino, from other towns, and a lot of those people were on the walk from other areas, and they were very complimentary of what we've got in our area. So
Thank you. It's good news story.
so there's 1 to go. Yep. And I know there are pedestrian crossings in other towns, but I don't know if we've ever had any requests for them. This group's very, but I'd say when this one, we can ask that group to look at other visual obstacles, and we may be able to increase those in other areas too. They're a good group to work with. No other questions? Put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Page 12, delegates' reports. There's one delegates' report there from Councillor Humphries and myself. Could I get a mover, please?
Move the recommendation.
I'll second. Any questions on that? Put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Page 16, item 13, matters for determination without debate. Has any councillors got anything?
14.1, Mr Mayor.
Anyone else? No? I'll call the draft financial statements as we have a, that's 17.2, presentation on that, and I'll also call 15.1 because we need to appoint a delegate. So I need a recommendation to adopt 17.1. Can I get a mover, please?
I'll move.
Councillor Hayes.
Second.
Who seconded that, sorry? Thank you. I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour? 14.1, called by Councillor Walker. Councillor Walker.
Mr Mayor, I would move the recommendation as printed. I'll speak to it if I get a second.
I'll get a seconder, please.
Second the recommendation.
Councillor Humphries. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation as printed, as I indicated. This matter focuses on the determination of the Chief Judge of the Land and Environment Court, Mr Justice Preston, to grant development approval for the land under certain conditions. The report before us tonight in para 2 says Council, and I quote, Council now has an option to appeal the Land and Environment Court decision. In reality, council has the option not to appeal, and there is a difference, and we should focus on that. There are no valid grounds to appeal in my mind. In this matter, any appeal needs to be limited to questions of law, nothing else. Our legal advice provided by Jason Lazarus SC clearly says any appeal would not enjoy reasonable prospects of success, but when you read his opinion, it's hard to find any issue on which we would have any prospect of success, let alone a reasonable one. There is, in my opinion, no reasonable argument that could be put forward, and any consideration of appealing this matter is folly. We need to strip out the emotions on the matter, take away any argument of merit or otherwise, and put aside whether some people do or do not want this development to proceed for whatever reason. The debate is a narrow one and can only be about whether or not to appeal. It is a debate about the law. We should not appeal. After already spending more than $350,000 plus $80,000 in staff time and expenses on this last action, an extraordinary amount of ratepayer money, the prospect of wasting a further $200,000 on a futile appeal is unthinkable. We should, as the recommendation states, not pursue this matter in the Court of Appeal and work with all stakeholders to achieve the best outcome as possible. I support the recommendation as printed.
Thank you. Councillor Humphries as seconder.
Thanks very much. I'll try to move through my notes. Councillor Walker has pointed out a couple of bits that I was going to speak on. The advice identifies 4 potential questions of law which may be relevant under section 57(1) of the Land and Environment Court Act 1979. If error were to be demonstrated, these are documented in the report with a comment relating to each. The first one is the unauthorised works, and the comment being did not discern any error. The second one being designated development. Again, this one was commented did not perceive any errors. The koala SEP, however, was assessed as being more complex. There may have been an error in not taking the guidelines into consideration, but it continues on that it was also unclear as to whether taking the guidelines into account would have made any difference to the findings. The fourth one was the bioswales. This one was viewed as merit-based determination, and hence Mr Lazarus concluding that in his view the appeal for the judgment would not enjoy reasonable prospects of success. I do feel for the community being involved with this for over 40 years, and I can't imagine how they must have felt when the regional panel refused it in 2022, then to see this being approved just recently. So I do feel this, but I think it's worth pointing out that the application approved by the Land Environment Court on appeal it isn't the same proposal. There's significant changes, and they're included in the report: a change to the community title subdivision, the addition of the proposed natural disaster shelter in place facility, changes to the location and staging of the development, changes to the stormwater design, and the amount of fill. Fill was commented on by one of the speakers, so I will ask a bit about that, about the truck movements and the fill. So the amount of fill proposed and the removal of the foreshore reserve. It's really important for us to know that development consent will be required for stage 2 and the community shelter in place facility, as well as further approvals, for example, the civil works. There are mechanisms under the Local Government Act and Environmental Planning and Assessment Act to recoup costs from the development. Oh, sorry, I am quite nervous about this one. To recoup costs from the developer and future residents on the site. For example, we know about developer contributions and a special rate. A special rate could be come about that could be applied to future residents of the development. So that would in effect mean that if we do the bioswales, the people living at the development at the time would pay towards those bioswales and anyone into the future. In supporting the recommendation, with the advice to hand, there are limited prospects to successfully appeal in this matter or to justify further expenditure on the appeal when there is very real possibility that development may still occur on the site. I believe that the public consultation throughout the history of this issue has contributed greatly to a significantly changed DA. I also believe that Richmond Valley Council has represented our community earnestly and shown consideration for the community's concerns and is committed to working with all stakeholders to achieve the best possible outcome for the community from the approved development and in accordance with the development consent conditions.
Thank you.
I do
Thank you.
support the recommendation.
To Councillor Walker, it's been just raised by Councillor Humphreys there and other speakers, and we've had emails, and it's also mentioned in the report under budget implications. There's the third paragraph about the costs in the future. To save me moving an amendment, if you would take a part 7 to your motion, which I will read it out. If you like, I have passed it on to Mrs. Clark. And it reads, Part 7, investigate options to levy charges to cover all costs associated with the establishment and construction of the development from the developer, and rates and or charges that can be levied on future residents for ongoing maintenance costs, including bioswales.
It's a very wide-reaching number 7, Mr Mayor. I'd prefer you moved an amendment.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll move an amendment, which is the recommendation, and make that a part 7 if I can get a seconder, please.
Second.
Councillor Hayes. Does anybody want to speak to the motion to start with? If not, I'll speak to my amendment. If that's okay. Councillors, as I mentioned, it has been stated in the budget implications, and there are going to be some financial burden in the future if this development goes ahead. And I think that this council today needs to cover that off, because this development could take another or many years, and who knows, it could be another council before it gets underway. But I think we need to give that guidance. The reason I'm supporting that we do not object to the judgment, it's quite clearly written. And as Councillor Walker stated, it's down to the law of the judge, what he made, the judgment he made. But I'm going to ask the General Manager a question, because I've had it said to me, and it's been stated tonight, that is the Queen's Counsel we got, the barrister, are they actually from the same firm that represented council in the Land and Environment Court?
No, he's not. So he's a barrister. Barristers are independent. When they are admitted to the bar, they're independent, they are objective, and they're experts. And Jason Lazarus has an extensive history of cases in a Land Environment Court and in other courts. He's a senior counsel, so when they're admitted to the bar, you're a barrister, and then as you get more experienced and skilled, you then get a designation of a senior counsel. So he's very well-regarded expert on, which is exactly why he was selected to give us an opinion. So it is an independent opinion by a highly regarded independent expert. And yes, he received information from our legal team, but that is because he needed to receive all of the information that was available, including obviously the judgment, but the transcript and other reports that formed the case and the hearing, so that he had all the information available to him to then formulate that memorandum of advice, which we have received. So there's a clear distinction here that he is an independent barrister admitted to the bar, works independently. And barristers get information and briefs from legal firms, from solicitors. They take that into account in the advice that they deliver. A quick Google of Jason Lazarus SC will take you to the chambers that he works from. Has a long list of cases that he has been involved in. And so I think if anyone has some doubt, I'd encourage you to have a look through that to get an understanding of his standing in the legal fraternity, and in particular with regards to the the Land and Environment Court.
Thank you. Councillors, there were 4 identified potential questions of law which might be amendable to an appeal under S57(1) of the Land and Environment Court Act 1979, if error were to be demonstrated. And that opinion, and I'm reading from the report, but I'm short-circuiting. In the issue of unauthorised works, Mr Lazarus concluded that he did not discern any error in Councillor and Preston CJ's approach to that question. The second one, in reviewing this matter, Mr Lazarus concluded that in appearing this matter, Council could not be successfully challenged all 3 reasons presented by Preston CJ, and he did not perceive any errors on these findings in regard to the designated development issue. Third one, the issue of which Koala SEP should be used for assessment of this application is complex. However, Mr Lazarus was in the view that Preston CJ was correct. And the fourth one, the matter of dedication of the bias whales to Council, Mr Lazarus concluded that in his view, an appeal from the judgment under S57(1) of the LEC Act would not enjoy reasonable prospects. So Council, tonight we face the difficult choice of whether or not to attempt to appeal this decision. In this regard, the appeal is limited to questions of law rather than the merits of the development. So if we now go to the memorandum of advice conclusion, it clearly states, for the above reasons from that memorandum, in my view, an appeal from the judgment under the section S57(1) of the LEC Act would not enjoy reasonable prospects of success. That's what we're here to do tonight, is act on that law. And look, there's a lot of emotions out there, and it's got a long trail, as we all know, but that's the law of the day. And that was handed down, and there's been a lot of criticism, Council. And what the community got to remember is Council made a recommendation to the planning panel to refuse it. The planning panel refused it. This is a decision by the court, and Council can only appeal that. And on those legal advice, I can't bring myself to appeal it. Councillor Hayes, you second that
I did.
amendment?
I did. When I got here tonight, I also had a .7, which is very similar, and I've got it jotted down here, so I'm just going to read it for the sake of reading it. I said that Council proceeds to levy all costs associated with the drainage, the bushfire and the flood impacts and community facilities back to future residents of the subdivision. So it's in agreement with your dot point 7. That's why I've seconded it. And, you know, I can't see any point in why this development should be put back on the community as a cost at any point in time. And as Councillor Walker has already stated, the amount of money it's cost us to date for the appeal and what this appeal could possibly cost us, I can't see any point in spending any more money. And in the future, we don't want it to cost the ratepayers any more money. That's why it should be levied back on the development. In the report, you go over to page 21. On the conclusion, it starts off, it says, the Iron Gates development is a long-standing issue that has polarised the community for more than 40 years. It is likely to continue to do so, regardless of the outcome of this matter. Down there further, it says there's a very real possibility that development may still occur on the site, even if the appeal is successful. So for those reasons, I'm going to fully support the recommendation with the amendment and move on. Thank you.
Yeah, your question?
No, I was going to speak against the amendment.
Okay, yep.
Mr Mayor, whilst I understand the intent of the amendment, I think it's potentially unlawful because to suggest that all costs associated be levied on the developer may well cut across costs that are legally the responsibility of other entities. I don't know for certain which ones it would be, but it concerns me that the word all costs is in there because it does leave it open to the developer being forced to pay the cost of another entity or group or government department or anybody the way it's written. Councillor Hayes' attempt to specify it, I think, is more amenable in that it specifies which costs you're trying to levy. So I have to oppose it on the basis that such a general catch-all phrase of all costs may well capture things that aren't right.
I think the word at the beginning, investigate, it doesn't say that impose, it says investigate, the first word. So it's only investigation. Any other speakers?
Just a quick question first, if I could, just
Yes.
in relation to dot point 7. For, I guess, for the community's sake, what potential costs or levies may we be looking at? Not so much a monetary figure, but what potential costs could council recoup in relation to this development?
Mr General Manager, you might be able to talk about avenues that, if these are achievable or not under the Local Government Act.
I think the key example here is the bioswales, and they're obviously quite a lengthy topic of discussion during the hearing. They are a high maintenance item, and on that basis, our team objected to that inclusion. The Chief Judge has made the decision. As far as options to then moving forward, if those bioswales are built, obviously they do come at a significantly higher cost than other stormwater management processes. So special rates can be levied on designated areas within a local government area that needs to be for specific purposes above what a council would ordinarily provide a community. And so there is an option for that. If there is to be additional income, that would require a special rate variation to increase council's permissible general income by whatever that amount of additional funds is needed for that designated specific bit of maintenance. I'm just using this as an example. So I think that's, I suppose that's the intent of this amendment, is that the additional costs of this development that council, as a result of the judgment, would need to fund should come from those who are in that residential development, is what that amendment's intending. So there is a provision there with special rates and special variations to get those additional funds. So that's that example around special rates. Obviously, the other contributions plans and fees for connection to water and sewer, and those would apply as they do for any other similar development. I hope that's clarified the query.
Can I just throw a question in there? Emergency services levy, is that something that we can change for a particular development or not?
We don't control the emergency services levy, so no, it would, wouldn't. It's not something we have control of to change.
Councillor Murray.
Okay, well, I understand that the question being asked today is to base this decision on error in the interpretation of the law and not merit of the case, and I respect Mr. Jason Lazarus SC's recommendation that he has put down, and given the complex nature of this case, as has been stated, and on behalf of the thousands of submissions against this development, I'd like to move a motion for an amendment of the item 14.1.3. and ask that Council consider instructing our legal representation to seek a leave of absence or extension of time from the Land and Environment Court to lodge particulars for this appeal, so Council can complete additional due diligence, given the Council is in caretaker mode for the majority of time that has lapsed under the current timeline due to the local government election, and that Richmond Valley Council brief and engage a third party to review the case to underscore the recommendation provided by Jason Lazarus SC and to consider any other prospective grounds for an appeal.
Did you get that? Yep. You did? Then I'll find out where we're up to with this. We're still getting it to come through, is that right? Okay.
Mr Mayor, you're ruling, but I believe that should be a foreshadowed
It will be a
motion
foreshadow, yep.
and
it
not
will
an
be.
amendment.
For it to get up there. Councillor Murray, your foreshadowed amendment, there's something you mentioned about point 3. Is that in there?
No, I've missed that on my notes as I've been writing that as we've been speaking here. So this is in relation to 14.1.3.
We just want to get it right before you.
Mr Mayor, just a question. Can that be a foreshadowed amendment or shouldn't it be a foreshadowed motion?
Well,
Because it's a direct negative of the motion because it seeks to further the appeal and seek grounds to find to an appeal, which contradicts both the amendment and the original
well, if
motion.
it's totally in opposite, it's
It's a foreshadowed motion.
Can I ask a question? With this, the points in there, 1 to 7, do I understand it that you want to withdraw 3 and add that one and leave the other 6 items in there? Is that what you're trying to achieve?
Yes, that's correct.
okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Okay. Thank you.
Clarify that, and then we just... Needs to be a foreshadowing motion.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got to get another motion. I've got to get this out of the road. So, councillors, where we're at now, we have to put the amendment. If it's successful, it will become the motion. If it's not successful, it will lapse, and the motion will stand, and that will be a foreshadowed motion. All right? So,
Does
would you-
Councillor Murray need a seconder for that?
no, because it's foreshadowed when it'll be moved in a minute. Okay. Any other speakers on the amendment or the motion? Yes.
Yes, I would have a couple of things to add. Firstly, I want to extend today's acknowledgement of country to the Bandjalang people of the Bundjalung Nation, in particular Aunty Simone Barker, the custodian of the land, who will be directly impacted by today's decision, and pay my respects to her elders past, present and future. This issue, as has been highlighted, has caused deep pain in our community from a time well before I was born. Over 40 to 50 years of debate, protest and action to stop a development that is quite frankly marked in the wrong location, causing deep concern within the community, and I empathise with the community on this issue. I'd further like to acknowledge and thank the community speakers of today and table my reasons for table my reasons for seeking additional due diligence, underscoring the recommendations made by Mr Jason Lazarus, SC, and satisfying the community with a third-party assessment of that decision, and given the ongoing risks of costs to ratepayers with bioswales building and maintenance of. So, from my non-legal understanding, there is a clause 55, an interpretation of tipping point, and Register Fro ruled on that, indicating it had passed the tipping point and warranted a new DA to be lodged to be stacked up against the current day standard. This hasn't been itemised in the Jason Lazarus's recommendation. I think there's also a potential error that could be considered, and that is the potential perception of bias. There is a concern that the legal proceedings may appear biased, especially given the pressing issue of the housing crisis we are facing. An average person observing the 5 days of court proceedings could conclude that the urgency to address housing shortages could have influenced the decision-making process. It is crucial for the integrity of our legal system that decisions are made impartially, ensuring that all factors are thoroughly considered without undue influence from external pressures. As has been raised today by community members, there were 9 volumes of community submissions that were largely not considered by the Chief Justice Preston. In particular, Elaine Saunders raised the critical legal points referencing the case of White versus Ballina Shire Council, where development on site that had been cleared and subsequently regenerated was not permitted because of the regeneration counted as significant. If the remediation works ordered by the court back in 1997 had been carried out, we would be looking at a thriving ecosystem today, potentially altering the assessments of the environmental impact, particularly concerning the koala habitats. I think the court's failure to enforce its own remediation orders undermines the credibility of our legal system and sends a troubling message that individuals can ignore court directives and still benefit materially. This is not just a legal oversight, but it's a breach of public trust. This could potentially form a basis of an appeal. There's two more further points on the fire safety risks. The expert reports relied upon lacked experience in human factors. The proposed development increases the risk to residents, especially given the area's susceptibility to bushfires. It's worth also noting that hasn't come up today that the New South Wales government policy on shelter in place explicitly states it does not apply to greenfield sites like Iron Gates. Further to this, there may be grounds for an appeal based on the Air Force noise and land use conflict. There is extensive literature on health impacts of noise pollution, including hearing loss and stress-related illnesses, and ignoring all these factors, in my view, is negligent.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers?
Speaker, I've got a question for Councillor Murray, if she'd like to take a question. Is that allowed?
Yep. It's up to Councillor Murray if she takes it. Yep.
Okay, so you've mentioned the second respondent now. You've brought the second respondent into the picture. I'm just wondering if you have an opinion why they didn't take the opportunity to appeal the case, and are they expecting us to appeal it?
A fair question, and I don't believe Arnie Simone Barker is intending to appeal the case, given that she was personally named as a respondent. The financial impact, should she not succeed, is too high for an individual to consider.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Walker, for right to reply. Before I put that.
I'm happy for you to put your amendment first.
Okay, yeah, no, I was going to put that, but the mover usually gets the right to speak.
Mr Mayor, the only thing that I would add is just to pick up on Councillor Humphrey's point that the application as approved was different than that which was considered by the joint panel. Even with us not appealing, there is no certainty this development will go ahead. There are many, many hurdles that are there. And I believe, as I said in my opening statement, Mr Mayor, that whilst the report says Council now has an option to appeal the Land and Environment Court decision, in reality, the question for me is the option not to appeal.
Thank you. So, councillors, we have a motion and an amendment there. The amendment I moved with a change to number 7. It's the same as the motion, but an added 7. I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? It's carried. Against? Thank you. Councillor Murray, you did not vote, so yours will be taken in the negative. Okay? So that's... You got that? The names? Right, thank you. The amendment now becomes the motion, and now I have a foreshadow motion. No. I will now put my motion. All those in favour? It's carried, and the foreshadowed motion lapses. It's been a while since I've had to do that. Thank you. Councillors, we now... Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. Councillors, we now move on to page 56. 15.1. I believe I call that. I'll move it. And can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Morrissey. Is there any discussion? Put that motion in. All those in favour? I'm on the right one, aren't I? 15, right? Sorry, did I skip one? What did I skip? Eh?
It's the planning panel one.
56? Yeah, page 56. 15.1. Councillor. I think I put that motion, didn't I? I did. Yep. And it was carried unanimously. So, Mr. General Manager, we are now looking for a nomination. I'll for that. You can be the returning officer, is that?
I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's the opportunity for obviously needing a returning officer is dependent on the number of nominations that we have. We're obviously seeking I suppose a lead councillor and then an alternate councillor. So really just open it up for
You want?
nominations.
You want? Can we nominate, or do they nominate themselves, or what? I'll nominate Councillor Hayes. He's done it before and done a good job for council.
I think yeah. If I suppose
Or anyone can self-nominate. And then we need an alternative too, don't we?
ideally an alternate is good, but we also have the arrangement where our planning staff between Lismore and ourselves, because of that requirement around planning background. So at times it can be Director Jones in our instance, and obviously there's a couple of staff from Lismore that step into ours where required. So I suppose if there's any other councillors interested in contributing to our planning panel. If not, we can roll forward with one, and then which is what we've I think had for the last term. So if there isn't any other interest, we'll declare Councillor Hayes our representative on the Northern Region Planning Panel. Thank you.
Congratulations, I think. Councillors, we now move to 17.2 on page 63. And Mr. General Manager, I believe we have a presentation for our gallery.
Yeah. Look, obviously, as councillors, you've received a brief. We thought it was useful to provide a similar briefing for our community. Obviously, local government financial statements can take some interpretation, so I thought it was useful for our Manager of Finance to give us an overview of the financial statements and the results, and obviously the recommendation in front of you is to then put these financial statements out for community consultation as is required under the Local Government Act. So yeah, I'll just hand over to our Manager of Finance, Ms Martin, to step through a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So just as an overview, Council is required to prepare annual financial statements in accordance with Australian accounting standards and in line with the Local Government Code of Accounting Practice prescribed by the Office of Local Government annually. Council's auditor, HLB GCNC, previously known as TNR, or Thomas Noble and Russell, has undertaken the financial audit for the year ended 30 June 2024 on behalf of the Audit Office of New South Wales. The audit is designed to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. The Audit Office of New South Wales has issued the engagement closing report, which indicated it is likely to express an unmodified audit opinion on Council's financial statements. Overall, Council's financial position is sound, with net assets of $1.163 billion, including cash and cash equivalents of $82 million. Continued government grants have allowed us to complete a record $60 million capital works program with major upgrades to community facilities. This ambitious program has brought challenges in attracting and retaining sufficiently skilled staff, planning and delivering major construction projects in a volatile market with rising material and labour costs, and addressing the impacts of depreciation and ongoing maintenance of new facilities. Our focus for the 24 to 28 council term will be on improving our operating results, strengthening financial sustainability and preparing for the next stage of growth in the Valley. Council's income statement for the year ended 30 June 2024 had income from continuing operations of 109 million, expenses from continuing operations of 82 with an operating result of 26 million. Net operating result before capital grants and contributions was a loss of 14.46 million. Some of the key challenges we faced during the year, one of which was depreciation. So accounting standards require council to index its asset values annually to reflect the fair value of the net assets. These indexation rates are released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics in July, after the end of the financial year, making it difficult to budget. These rates reflect the increasing cost of replacing those assets in line with the current market conditions. As the cost of construction is increasing, so is the cost to replace our assets. The indexation rates over the previous 3 years have been in excess of 5%. Prior to that, they were less than 1%. Comprehensive reevaluations of assets is also undertaken annually on a 5-year cycle, with the roads, bridges and footpaths asset class being undertaken in 23-24, resulting in an increment of 161 million. The net loss and disposal of assets was 4.3 million for 23-24. Disposed of assets include large infrastructure projects like the replacement of the casino swimming pool, and they're impacted by economic market in terms of resale value for some assets. Currently not budgeted for as generally considered a book value. However, this is something that more councils are beginning to factor into their budgets, and something we will look at addressing in the September quarterly budget review. Materials and services. The cost of supplies, materials and everyday operating expenses such as electricity and fuel have continued to rise at a rate much greater than council's revenue, impacting right across the community and local government sector. Some operational expenses were funded from internal reserves and unexpended funding from previous years, and some of the additional expenditure was offset by income in the form of grant funding received during the year that is announced after the original budget is adopted. Employee benefits and on-costs. So we saw this year increasing award rates plus $1,000 bonuses to staff as determined by the Local Government of New South Wales under the Local Government Award. Difficulties within the employment sector in attracting and retaining staff, the use of contract staff to fill gaps to ensure we can continue to deliver for our community, the delivery of large capital works programs along with natural disaster recovery works, increase in leave being taken as a possible hangover from COVID and flooding, and some additional costs in relation to the NRLX until the new leasing arrangement was undertaken, where staff were redeployed within the organisation. User charges and fees were below budget due to the cease of operations of the NRLX. Interest income was above budget, and that's just due to high interest rates in the economy and high levels of cash. The budget was conservative due to fluctuations that can occur in the economy, and this additional revenue was used to fund unexpected operational costs and overruns. Over the past 10 years, council's operations have increased considerably. Operating income has increased from 44 million up to 70 million, some 60%. Operating expenditure has increased from 46 million to 83 million, 80%, and capital expenditure has gone from 20 million to 60 million. Overall, council's investment in the community has increased from 63 million to 143 million per annum. Whilst only 2 operating surpluses have been achieved over the past 10 years, the majority of council's key performance indicators remain above the industry benchmark. However, the gap between income and expenditure is growing, which is being felt industry-wide, as councils face the challenge of meeting the needs of the community and maintaining the required level of service with increasing costs of supplies, materials and everyday living expenses, which are rising at a rate much higher than council's revenue. Overall, council's financial position is sound with net assets of 1.163 billion, including cash and cash equivalents of 82 million. Available working capital is sufficient to manage council's day-to-day operations and provide a safeguard against unforeseen and unbudgeted expenditures, along with the balance of internal reserves, which currently sit at 32 million. The next steps following this meeting, we should receive our audit opinion from the Audit Office of New South Wales. and by the 30th of October, Council will advertise the financial statements for the year ended 30 June 24 to the public and invite submissions in writing to Council with respect to the audited financial statements or auditors' reports. The 19 November Council meeting will include the presentation of the audited financial statements and auditors' reports to the public. 7 days post that meeting, which is the 26th of November, submissions will close at 4 p.m. Any submissions will be reported to the December Council meeting. Okay.
Thank you very much. Councillors, we have a recommendation back on page 64. Could I get a mover, please, or a seconder? Councillor Cornish, second.
I'll second.
Councillor Hayes. Councillor Cornish. Councillor Hayes.
Yeah, I'd just like to note something in there, in the report. Over the last few months, Council's been publicly accused of not being open and transparent. The main accusation was based around the loss of revenue from the forced closure of the NRLX. This change was previously made public in the March quarterly budget review statement, so it's been out there. And it is also for public review in this item here today. On the new page now, it's page 65. Halfway down that page, there's a statement there that says, unexpected expenses were funded from higher than expected interest income, including the change in operating structure of the NRLX. This had a one-off impact on Council's operating result of $1.5 million for the 2023-24 year. Council's move towards leasing the structure of the NRLX will see a more positive outcome as the future deficit of $200,000 is forecast for the 24-25 year, which is a significant improvement on previous results under the old operating structure and will further improve when loan borrowings from the facility upgrade are finalised in 2024-25. I've just brought this up to, we are open and transparent with what's going on out there. It's there for the public to see. It's in black and white. I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Walker.
I can't not let that go, given it's probably aimed at me, but I think there are issues around the NRLX, if you want to get into it, which I was going to do when it comes back in November, Mr Mayor, where the community were not told, for example, what legal fees were spent on the process, what the consultant fees were paid. They were generalised, and whilst those figures about income loss were produced in March, I still don't know what the legal fees were, even though the report I've just skimmed through it shows about $500,000 plus this council spent on legal fees in the last year alone. I'm still interested in those details. So if Councillor Hayes would like to be as transparent as the community would like, I look forward to it.
Thank you. Any other speakers? I've got a couple of questions. Mr General Manager, there was a statement in here which I can't find now, and it was about, I think it was devaluing the casino sewage treatment plant, which would be advantageous in the future. I think there was something in, yeah? I just can't pick it up, that's all.
So we've accelerated the depreciation of the casino sewer treatment plant in line with the projected timeframe for replacement of that asset.
Right, so in the future, that won't come at a bigger cost.
Yes, that's correct.
It'll plateau out.
Yes.
We've taken the hit now,
Yep.
type of thing.
Yeah, we'll take the hit over a number of years as opposed to just 1 year once it's replaced.
Okay, thank you. So that's contributing to that figures. Yep.
It contributes to it, but there will still be that in it. So just to be clear, it's not just one lump this year.
No.
Yeah, there'll be a lump over, well, was it 5 years left?
5 years.
5 years,
So we've projected that its life cycle is 5 years,
Yep.
whereas prior to this decision, it had a longer life.
Okay. So that's why it's
So
coming at a
we've brought
cost.
that life shorter, which obviously then brings up your
Impact,
cost.
yeah. So just while I'm on that, and I noticed it was mentioned earlier, I think it's a real feather in the previous councils that we've put an investment in our community, and as I said, it was mentioned earlier, 63 million 10 years ago to 143. And you've only got to look at around a lot of the assets that we've opened up for our community, and I think they've really appreciated that over the years that we're doing that, because if we want to be a regional hub, we need to have those services for people to come and live in our area and enjoy the Richmond Valley. Just one last quick question. I think we've got 5 of the ratios out of the 9 positive. What's the outlook going forward to get another one, and then another one, and another one?
Look, some of those ratios we're not meeting due to the significant increase. So, for example, our own source revenue, we're still bringing in a similar amount, if not a little bit more own source revenue, but when you then have a large increase in capital and natural disaster recovery funding, from a ratio perspective, which is a proportion, and the benchmark is 60, it's slipped below the 60. So that's an example of that one. As far as the operating result, which I'd have to say was a surprise. Some of the, and we've already had conversations about how do we not get surprised. Some of these aren't, you know, the increase in depreciation and the cost of disposal of assets, which account for about 9 or 10 million of that, are difficult to budget for. But we've already had discussions with neighbouring councils about how they handle it, and they are starting to budget for it as well. But if we budget for it, that will mean that we will need to stop doing some stuff. So it's that balance between the performance ratios and the ongoing, I suppose, desire from our community to have new assets and high levels of service, which is something that, you know, all councils are faced with, and certainly a couple of these results did come as a bit, as a surprise. There are, and look, this has been through. We had our audit committee meeting last week. The audit office were at that, so they're very pleased with the audit side of things. Those ratios have certainly been talked about, but they've been explained as to how they have occurred. But that's not to say that we can sit back and not do anything about it. So there's certainly some work that we need to do as we monitor this current year's budget, but also things we need to consider when we're having budget discussions early next year about what is in the 25-26 budget and long-term financial plan moving forward.
No, they were just not a concern, but they did raise my interest, and I know there are other councils, a lot of other councils, having the same issues. It's not only us, Richmond Valley Council. So, thank you. Any other questions or speakers? Councillor Cornish, right to reply. I'll put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Page 72, general business, there's nil. Matters for determination on page 73. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Morrissey and a seconder.
Second.
Councillor Humphries. Councillor Morrissey. Councillor Humphries. Any councillors got any think they'd like to questions or they'd like to say about matters for information? Councillor Hayes.
Probably note how good the code of conduct figures are for this council. We're in that part of the meeting, are we? Yep, that's there somewhere, isn't it? You've thrown me because I've got a different agenda now than what I started with.
I think you mentioned code of conduct, which is on page 91.
91.
Which is our statistics for the reporting period.
Yeah.
Did you like you turned it off?
Oh,
Robert was
sorry.
on.
Just to note how good they are. There's been none.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is
No,
great. Yep.
I actually wrote a little note. We've got a very good record with councillors not having a code of conduct, and I just wrote a little note. It's a great outcome for our residents, as other councils have many complaints. that comes at a cost to the community in both time and money. And I hopefully some of those, after the election, some of those other councils can get on a bit better, because it's to make the media, that's all for the wrong reasons. And I look forward to this time next year having the same report with O's all through it again. Be great. Page 77. The bottom graph there, the total dollar amount development applications. And as we know, it's not the numbers, but this is about the dollars. Already, we're the second highest annual dollars over the last, 5 years. So hopefully that'll lead to more development in our area. I believe with those figures there is confidence in the Richmond Valley area. They're outstanding, and who knows, we could have our first 70, 80 or 90 or $100 million development applications. Hopefully. And the other one I have is what's that, 77, 98, page 98. Doesn't look right. Yeah, 98. No, sorry. 98. Oh, on the cemeteries. Yes, of course. Councillors may recall that they brought this new agreement in, and I'm just I always wondered how it would work, how we would handle it, and I'm pleased that report is in there, because we really didn't know. We knew there was going to be a fee and what was going to happen, and the money went to the government. But I think that explains a lot more of what our community now will have to go through to have a burial. So yeah, so thank you for that. It answers a lot of questions for me. Any other councillors? Put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, we now move on to page 114. Questions on notice. Is there any questions? There was nil. And questions for the next meeting in writing. Has any councillor got a question in writing? No. Well, councillors, that brings us to the end of the meeting. I'd like to thank the gallery for your attendance, the staff and councillors, and everyone. Please have a safe trip home. Thank you very much. I'll close the meeting.